this government, led by Russian-made billionaire Bidzina Ivanishvili, is doing the opposite, is trying to make Georgia dependent on Russia politically, economically, strategically. But I am certain that the Georgian people will make a choice on October 26th that will allow us to once again make Georgia integrated in European financial, economic, political networks, rather than make it a client state for Russia.
Well, the Prime Minister of Georgia wants to introduce a ban on pro-Western parties and, it's said, bring the country back into the Kremlin's orbit. Tina Bokuchava is the head of Georgia's largest opposition party. That's the United National Movement, and she's on the line live now. Welcome to you, Tina.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us, Tina. Can you just set out your fears about what the government seems to have in mind?
Well, it's not the first time that the United National Movement is being targeted by the ruling party and the billionaire who is the informal decision maker in the ruling party, a Russian-made oligarch by the name of Bidzina Ivanishvili. However, now, ahead of key parliamentary elections, Ivanishvili has stated that he will outright outlaw all opposition parties who have a chance of crossing the 5% threshold. This is trying to drag Georgia back to USSR. It is jeopardizing Georgia's European integration. It is undermining Georgian democracy. And frankly, it is threatening everything that Georgians have striven for centuries, which is European prospects and a strong democracy. But I'm certain that Georgians will make a choice for a European future on October 26th, which is when the key elections in Georgia take place.
Right. But as things stand, you're worried that this plan by the government, if it goes ahead, could lead to Georgia becoming a Russian puppet state, or at least acting like one.
I'm sorry, the connection wasn't great, so I couldn't hear all of the question.
Tell me about your worry about the effects of this new law. You're concerned it could turn Georgia into a puppet of Russia, or act as if it was taking orders from President Putin.
Indeed. Just a couple of months ago, a highly controversial law which mimics a law adopted back in 2012 by the Russian State Duma, which targets civil society organizations and critical media to silence and thwart critical voices in Georgia, was introduced and met large-scale protests, the likes of which Georgia has not seen even in its famous 2003 Velvet Rose Revolution. Nevertheless, the government went ahead to adopt this law, which is another way of cracking down on critical voices. Of course, as I said, the parliamentary elections are a chance and a choice for the Georgian people to not only have a government that will cancel this law and allow civil society organizations to function freely, as they should in a democratic society, but also to revert to European integration, which is where a prosperous, a secure, and stable future can lie for Georgia. With a neighbor like Russia, the only way Georgia can safeguard its future and have a chance at prosperity, rather than the kind of oligarchic, corrupt rule that Georgians suffer from today, is to secure our future in the European Union.
So what is the outlook then for the October general election? I mean, is it expected that Bidzina Ivanishvili's party, the Georgia Dream Party, could win that and get a mandate to do some of the things that it wants? Or do you expect to defeat the government?
We absolutely expect that the Georgian people will choose a European future. Therefore, we absolutely expect a win for the opposition. As you noted, I represent the United National Movement, which is the largest opposition party here in Georgia. However, I believe that the next government will be a coalition government where the United National Movement will be working with other democratic pro-Western parties. All the polls indicate that the government is losing, that the sum of the votes that the opposition will be receiving far exceeds anything that Ivanishvili will get, even if he uses Russian-style tactics of interference, intimidation, pressure, in order to falsify the elections. The Georgian people have made a choice, and that is a choice for a European future, and that is a choice for change in a government that has not delivered for the Georgian public.
Is there evidence of the Kremlin taking a hand in interfering in this coming general election in your country?
On a daily basis, we see the government mimicking Kremlin propaganda lines and being constantly hailed by Kremlin propagandists for doing the right thing, which can only mean that they're serving Kremlin interests in their foreign policy, in their unwillingness to implement reforms that would have strengthened Georgian democratic credentials and allowed Georgia to continue on a European path,
Yes.
Be it making Georgia more dependent on Russia in terms of trade, which is catastrophic for the Georgian economy, because as we know, Russia always uses trade relations for blackmail and for geopolitical purposes to blackmail its neighbors. We've seen this in Georgia. We've seen this in countries even as close to Russia as Belarus. We've seen this with Baltic states, which is why the rest of the world is either imposing sanctions on Russia or doing everything they can to diversify away from the Russian economy. Whereas this government, led by Russian-made billionaire Ivanishvili, is doing the opposite, is trying to make Georgia dependent on Russia politically, economically, strategically. But I am certain that the Georgian people will make a choice on October 26th that will allow us to once again make Georgia integrated in European financial, economic, political networks, rather than make it a client state for Russia that has 20% of Georgian territory occupied after the 2008 invasion.
Yeah, and arguably the passage of a law like this would be an obstacle to Georgia joining the European Union, which is something that most Georgians seem to want, according to opinion polls. Just lastly and briefly, you have had death threats, haven't you? Just tell us briefly about that.
Particularly during the Russian law, a lot of opposition leaders, civil society leaders, and just regular protesters who were out in the streets defending Georgia's European future were being threatened and beaten. The former chair who preceded me was brutally beaten with multiple injuries to his head, which was the primary reason why he had to step down, as well as another prominent member of the United National Movement, Dmitry Chikovani. Myself, I have also been threatened on multiple occasions,
Tina, I have to leave it there, Tina. Forgive me, but we wish you well, and we'll be watching your election. Tina Bokuchava.
Digital Radio.